everyone, welcome back to our writing test series. Today we have a new question here. Many people in cities today live in high-rise apartment blocks. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this type of living? Very interesting question. This is of course an advantage-disadvantage essay. It's pretty straightforward really. Okay, so first as usual we'll get our main ideas done. And I don't know why the text is like this. Let me change that. Okay. And of course you need to ask yourself first, do you think this is largely a good thing or do you think this is largely a bad thing? So whatever you think is the weak opinion, you're going to want to put that here first, and your strong opinion should be second. Okay, so I think this is, well, I don't know, I think it's not such a good thing. I mean, you could have different perspectives. Of course, you could say, for example, that it's maybe it's just better for a city to have a lot of apartment blocks, well, specifically high-rise apartment blocks, because you have more people living in a space. You don't really need, for example, urban sprawl like you would in a suburb. Right, you have lots of these separate homes and they're only accessible by car, which is a major problem in many parts of the world. There's no public transport, and you can't really, it doesn't make sense to provide public transport for, like, you know, a very spread out suburb. But that's the one aspect. Of course, there's other aspects. There are people who don't like living in apartment blocks. But here specifically, they're focusing on high-rise apartment blocks. It's really important that you don't ignore this, right? That's super interesting there. Like, they specifically mention high-rise apartment blocks. Not every apartment block is high-rise, right? So they really want you to think about this specific thing here. What are the benefits and drawbacks of living in a high-rise apartment block? So I don't really know. I would say this is kind of a negative thing, but then that depends, because again, I would, if I were to, you know, write personally, I would say, well, you know, there's a danger of, let's say, if you have kids or something, or pets even, right? And they could just, you know, fall and they would, you know, get injured or worse, die. So there's fear of heights. There's also risk of injury. I would probably say, again, there's also positives, you know, like, for example, if you live really high up, you get a really good view. You really get to insulate yourself from the noises of the city. So that can be a really good thing. Plus, it can, of course, be a risk factor if you live someplace that's in a seismic zone. So a seismic zone is a place where many earthquakes occur. So naturally, that's a huge issue. Not so much if you live in Japan, I guess, but well, not everyone has that technology. So I'm kind of divided here. It really doesn't. I don't care about apartments either way. I would rather live in a house. So high rise, low rise, medium. It doesn't matter to me. So I'm kind of undecided, but it doesn't really matter. If you really feel undecided, just pick whatever and go with it, because anyway, it's not like you can get away with just writing 2 ideas. It's not like you can get away with just writing 3 ideas here and 2 ideas here or something, right? No, you have to have 3 supporting ideas. That is mandatory if you want a 7 or above. So it really doesn't matter. It can be whatever. I think I'll just start with the positives. Okay. So what are the advantages of high-rise living? So simply living in a, also called skyscrapers, but that's a bit of a colloquial term. You could maybe use another term. And there's nothing wrong with repeating high-rise apartments. That's perfectly fine. Towers, that's another term we use very commonly. So you really can use, you know, whatever you feel is most appropriate. Don't worry too much about the word choice, yeah? There's nothing wrong with repeating every now and then, as long as you're not repeating it frequently. Okay, so let me really think about my sentence before I put it down. I think maybe I could just say, living in a towering apartment complex, just provide a few. It could be a good idea for some people, right? Yeah, could be beneficial for some people. One aspect is, if you live in a city, of course, I mean, the whole thing is about cities. Of course, you're not going to find a high-rise apartment in a rural area. So city noises, traffic, sounds of people, you can, you know, be insulated from all that. Right. So this is just my keywords. I don't really have to develop it. What else could be a good thing about living in a high-rise apartment. Let me just check if my stream is on. You could maybe say that they tend to have better build quality. I guess that's also kind of important, because you wouldn't want to live someplace where it's poorly built. Obviously, we do tend to think though that like 100 200 year old buildings, apartments, etc., of course they are in existence, they tend to actually have really good bones. But for example, you have materials that we used to use 50 100 years ago that we no longer use because they're unhealthy, they're not good for you. Of course, with passing time, standards of safety become, so you could probably say, especially if it's high rise, you have to submit to the municipal government some stuff. I don't know, I'm not like a builder or something, but I know that there are some safety regulations, so you can be sure that okay, this is better build quality, right? And what else? I find it difficult to really think of positives, because when I think of apartment living, I just think of the negatives. So, again, your personal biases can, kind of hamper the way you think about it. But try to put yourself in somebody else's position. Just think, if you were somebody who just loved high-rise apartments, just loved living in a tower or something, right? Great views, I guess. But I mean, it's not really. It depends. I'll just put this down as a placeholder in case I don't find anything better, then I'll just go with that. It's fine. I mean, it's reasonable. Yeah, if you live someplace, especially if you buy an apartment, you're going to live there for a long time, hopefully, and you wouldn't want to live someplace where you don't like the view, right? I mean, it's a selling point. It's definitely a selling point. Apartments with good views come at a higher price, so naturally that makes sense. People pay for that, so it's a good idea. There's nothing wrong with it. I just think that for me personally, okay, it's a good one, but maybe it's not the strongest idea you could possibly have, but it's fine. I mean, for IELTS standards, it's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that at all. And then we're going to counteract. So we're going to use something like however. However, life in such apartments can be. Of course, you could use flat, but it's whatever. It really just your word choice is your choice. As long as your spelling is fine. As long as it's standard. Apartment. Saying apartment is more common than saying flat nowadays, but in many places, apartment can refer to a specific style. If you're from a place like that, don't worry, you can just use this word. Doesn't matter if it's an apartment, 2-room house, whatever. I know there's regional variations, so don't worry about those things. Just standard apartment. You have a collection of flats in floors. So life in such apartments can be, I would say, stressful. When I think, and this is something I can fill in, for example, risk of injury and death, right? Bad for, earthquakes, not just even earthquakes. Now, I don't know, of course, I'm not like an architect or something, but, an emergent, let's say if there's, a fire that's, just a couple days ago, in fact, a fire broke out in an apartment building close by, and yes, it was in fact a tower. Well, thankfully no one was injured, but it's difficult. They have the fire department, of course they have cranes and stuff, but there is in fact a limit to how high they can go. Sometimes you need helicopters, and that can of course take time, especially if you're in a developing country, right? So that is a risk. What if there's a fire, and what are you going to do? Are you going to jump? I mean, this is super easy. Just think of the World Trade Center, right? So how are you gonna, you think, even if there isn't a fire in your home, if there's a fire in the home next to yours, above yours, below yours, that is a problem for you, right? Even if you are careful, right? So what are you gonna do? Are you gonna jump out of your 20th floor window? You're gonna die for sure, right? So yeah, and of course, I mean, if there's a fire on like the 3rd floor or something, it's super easy. You can just jump. Yes, of course you'll be injured, but I mean, people could just lay a mattress or something, right? And even if you call the fire department, it's easy for them to get you out to, make sure the water goes to where it has to go to. So, yeah, it can be stressful. At least that's what I think. We went to view an apartment, and it was like on the 10th floor or something, and they didn't have like here. Traditionally, we tend to have these grills, yeah. And they didn't have any grills. It just had like this glass pane, and there was a huge drop below, and it really scared me. I couldn't even stand near the window. I just feel like I'm gonna fall at any time. So that's just me. But if you have kids, if you have pets, that's of course a major concern. Okay. What else could I possibly say here? Okay, well, why would it be stressful? There's too many people around you. I don't like that. I don't know. Um, there's management issues, of course. You know, if you want to do something in an apartment, even though you own it, you have to have your housing society or whatever. Um, of course, that can be the case with houses as well. You have, what are they called? Housing association? I'm not sure what they're called. Oh, homeowners association. So HOAs, they get a lot of hate from people who live in houses, that are linked to an HOA. But it's similar, of course. So there are management issues. We have all these people, and if you like, I think it can be actually more expensive, of course, because you have to pay for garbage, water, and stuff like that. Utilities, your utilities are going to be more expensive, so of course you're going to think about that as well, right? So I think it's good. We're good to go. 10 minutes in, and I have all of my ideas. I basically have my essay's skeleton right here. Now I just have to fill it up with body parts. That sounds so morbid. Okay, I'm gonna write my introduction now. So, obviously, apartment living has become really popular. I mean, it's more common. Most people live in apartments, I think. I mean, depends where you live, of course, but it is now more common for the average person to live in an apartment than in a detached house. 3 years of change, and how more people now live in urban areas. I think most of the world's population lives in an urban area, so naturally, I mean, there's limited space. You can't build wide, you have to build up, right? 3 years of change, and 3 years of, I would say, demographic, yeah, and social change. Most of the world's population now live in urban areas where apartments, of course, outnumber houses naturally. Oops, we're gonna have water there. Although life, in apartments, I would say, especially high-rise, all new buildings where I live, they're all high-rises. They're like 30 floors and above and stuff. There's no traditional, like 3, 4 floor type of houses, 7 floor. Nope, they're not. These apartments are not being built anymore. Because of course there's so much demand for the land, right? So it is now more common for the average person to live in an apartment. 3 years of demographic and social change. Most of the world's population now live in urban areas where, due to paucity of land, outnumber houses. Although life in you could say, although living life, you could say hi, but that's very colloquial. You don't want to use colloquial language when you're writing an essay. That's really important, okay? So, although life in a high-rise could be, I've already said that, okay, we'll use it as an adjective. Living on a high floor, may sound like a good idea. Yeah, may it does carry many risks that cannot be ignored. Risks, risks, and it's just something that's unpleasant. So I don't know if I should say risks specifically. Um, but it's fine, really. I mean, they're not going to, be so. Again, it's just a 250 word essay. They're not going to scan every single word finely with a sieve or something. That's, oh my god, that's 70 words. That's a little bit too large. I would recommend most people to write just 50 words, not more than that. But I can do it, that's fine. I could finish the whole essay in just 30 minutes. Not a big deal for me. But for you, you have to take a different path, of course. Remember, this is just an ideal. You don't have to write like this exactly the same way. So don't be stressed out thinking, oh my god, how am I going to write like her? Don't have to. You don't need to. Okay, so gosh, my ear is still aching. Anyway, so we got our main idea, and you should always look at your supporting ideas and check if the order is good. So I think maybe I'll put this as number 1 because that seems like a much bigger point now. Yep, it's much more important. I would say the biggest attraction here could be the fact that newer tend to have better build quality and aesthetic sense, as requirements, as rules and regulations become more stringent. Another draw is the fact that in any city there is just bound to be a lot of noise, but living high up can easily insulate people from all the hustle and bustle of city life. There we go. There we have our 2 ideas done already, and then we're the last one. Okay, so when you have your skeleton, it becomes pretty easy. But you have to have it mentally ready, right? I'm not like thinking of my whole sentence right now, right? It was already there. I just put, like the bare bones down here, right? Okay, that's already like 70-ish words. Okay, of course, many apartments, in fact, many such homes are in fact many such homes attract a premium price, actually. A premium price due to the great views that are made possible when one lives high above all other, buildings. Right? If you live on like the 20th floor, you get a great view. That's just undeniable. Let's check the word count. Ooh, this is already 107. I still have my like final sentence to write. So can seem well suited to those interested in such features. Obviously, if you place a premium on, I want to live someplace where there's no sound, I want to have a great view of the entire city skyline or the sea or whatever, then of course you're gonna think it's super cool, right? But if for someone like me, you're gonna think, oh no, that's too scary. Okay, that's good. It's 120 words. There we go. Then we have the next one. Okay, can be stressful. It is stressful. Imagine you're a parent. You're always gonna think, oh my god, what if my kid jumps out the window? They're just playing, or they're just careless. There have been cases like this, right? And that's obviously number 1. And then you have this, and then you have, of course, you could maybe say, oh well, you can just get like a grill, but those are not common. Those are common where I live. But now with the newer constructions, it's all about style and aesthetic features, and there's like, you just have this glass pane, and what if you fall? What if you just slip? Of course, it's not like that. Like the glass panes are up to your waist, but your upper body is heavier than your lower body, so it's pretty easy to fall. I'm not like making this up. And in most countries around the world, grills are not common at all. It looks weird to most people. So that's what I'm going off of. You could, of course, argue, and especially people who live where I do, they'll say, oh, but most of them have grills. Many used to, but if you look at new constructions or even constructions that were built like 10 years ago, not the case at all. And of course, you cannot have an apartment and not have any windows or balconies, right? That's just impossible. So you cannot just be like, okay, well, the whole thing is just, like fenced in. Nope, that doesn't work. The biggest concern is that there is an ever present. I honestly don't know how people live in such a place. I would always be scared, especially because where I live, it rains a lot, and like obviously it's slippery. I mean, I have balconies, but obviously I'm on the lower floor. Okay, the biggest concern is that there's an ever-present risk of injury or even death. Well, I mean, death is more probable. And I read about, and again, this is like pets as well. I mean, how is like a dog, cat, whatever supposed to know that, oh, I shouldn't jump? I mean, yeah, they'll mostly, be averse to it, but there have been accidents. My vet, she works elsewhere, like in town as well, and there's a huge hospital there, and they had this case. I think they lived on the 17th floor, and their dog fell from the 17th floor. Obviously, thankfully, not obviously, thankfully they were able to help him, and the dog recovered. But like, oh my God, that's just careless, really. Careless on the owner's part, especially for children and pets, right? Who may not know better or may not be careful. It's also important to note that taller buildings tend to not do very well. In earthquake-prone zones. And that rescues in cases of other emergencies, such as a fire, are much more difficult, right? Another concern is high costs of utilities, because most apartment complexes either have a society or are managed by companies that levy a monthly fee for general maintenance. And this fee is always higher in, high rises compared to normal apartments. There we go. And finally, with the right hands. And yep, my final sentence. Oh, that was quick. This is a little bit larger. I don't like that. It looks lopsided. It might not look like it to you, but I want to change that. But anyway, does choose to live in such an apartment, in such a place. There's always this, stress associated. Like, oh my God, what if my kid jumps? What if, yeah. There is always, I don't want to say stress. Maybe I could use something else instead. Let's see. There is always risk. I've already kind of said that. See, in the main idea in the first sentence, right? The first sentence of your essay and the last the first sentence of your body paragraph and the last sentence of your body paragraph there, and the introduction and the conclusion there, especially, you really don't want to repeat, the words, because it's naturally a place where the eye is, drawn to that area, right? So we want to be careful there. There's always danger. Well, not always danger, because my last point isn't about danger. Let's see. Maybe there's always there is much anxiety associated. If one does choose to live in such a place, there is much anxiety associated with. There we go. And finally, just keep it simple in conclusion. It is obvious, evident, whatever, apparent. It is evident that despite the general attractiveness of living in a skyscraper, it's okay, I can use that one here, that's fine. Well, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't use it. It's really okay because, it's just especially if you're taking the general exam, this kind of stuff is fine. Now, if you're taking the academic exam, then you want to be more careful. But with general essays, it's actually perfectly fine. But maybe if you're writing an academic exam, maybe you wouldn't use it. Maybe you would just use something else, like maybe let's say tall tower, right? Despite the general attractiveness of living in a tall tower, or maybe I could say towering building, right? Yep, good. So despite the general attractiveness of a towering building, such can be fraught with critical issues that make any benefits the benefits pale in comparison, right? Now this kind of sentence, I won't recommend everyone to try this kind of sentence, because obviously there are so many aspects here. I'm using, dependent clauses, relative clauses, and I have paling in comparison. I'm like expressing my opinion in this way. There's, of course, my students know a simpler way to do this, and that's what I recommend. It's perfectly good for a band 7, 7.5, and even 8 at times. But of course, if you really need an 8.5 or something, or if you need a 9, there will have to be different strategies compared to, what we usually teach for 7, 7.5s, and 8s. Okay, and then if people truly wish to live in one, they should be fully aware of all lifestyle. I'm not gonna say lifestyle, but maybe fully aware of all the benefits and drawbacks before they rent or buy. Right? See if it's really good for you. And there we have it. There's the whole thing. Let's see the word count. Okay, that's good. A little bit. There we go. Let's take the whole thing. Wow, that was quick. That was like 28 minutes. Damn, that was good. Okay, that's 387. It's always gonna be the case with my essays. There we go. Now I'm just gonna scroll down a little bit so you can see there's the introduction. There's body paragraph 1. There's body paragraph 2. And then we have the conclusion. There you have it. Now that was fun. I'll see you next week. Maybe I'll see you in a couple days. Let's see. Alright then, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.